My name is Alex.
And my name is Jenske.
And you are listening to the Podformatory podcast.
Hello Team 15 and thank you for tuning in to this Podformatory podcast, the podcast where we explain the ins and outs of social innovation and performatory as a whole. Who are we? Well, we are Alex and Jenske and we will be your connectors for next year, together with Estelle. What are connectors? We'll get back into that later. For now, just think of us as the student representatives of the performatory and the link between us and the teachers. But first, congratulations on joining the track Social Innovation. I can't wait to see you all either online or, whenever possible, offline the next year. Now, I'm sure you joined the Performatory because you liked all the things that social innovation has to offer. But I'm quite sure that you don't really know the specifics of how everything is run around here. What is process design? What is extension? How do you actually start a project? And how do you get ECs? We'll answer all those questions and any other topic related to social innovation and the education track within this podcast that are relevant to get you started next year. Now, without further ado, let's get started with the podcast. Enjoy! Hello and welcome to the Podformatory podcast. This is a podcast about the track social innovation within the study of international leisure and events management on the Breda University of Applied Sciences. It's a whole mouthful. We'll get to each and every one in a bit, including why exactly you should be listening or what you can get out of it. But first of all, who am I and who is the other person that's also here? My name is Alex and I am a second year student from the Social Innovation, and my colleague will now introduce herself as well.
Yes, because we're recording this with the two of us. I am Jenske. I'm also a second year student of Social Innovation. Like Alex mentioned, we started at the International Leisure and Event education. And then we were able to choose a track that we wanted to do. And we both chose for social innovation. And we will tell more about this. But first, we might be able to start with, why are we recording this podcast?
Yeah, sure. Because there's, of course, a reason. And first, we want to explain a little bit, like, who is it for? We want to make this podcast for the students of social innovation track, but also to just external stakeholders or for those who are just interested in what we do. We want to be able to give a platform to our students to present their stories, to have a place to share their own social innovations, but also as a little bit of a promotional tool of what exactly social innovation is and who we at the Performatory are.
Yes, and also, when I take a look at myself, before starting this track of social innovation, I really didn't know much about what it was. And I noticed that when I want to tell other people what we do at social innovation, it's still a bit vague. I miss having a tool to just share, which explains what we are doing. And I notice more people have this, so that's also a reason why we do this. And if you want to gain more information about the track of social innovation or maybe examples of projects of what the students of social innovation do, then definitely keep listening to the other podcasts we make. But today we will really focus on what is social innovation and how is it structured.
Definitely.
Alex, maybe it's interesting to tell me a little bit about your journey first. Like, why did you choose to study international leisure and event management, and why social innovation? What was the trigger for you?
All right. Good question. Because for me, I first wanted to get into the leisure and events industry just because I like organizing in every way, shape, or form. I've come from a hospitality background, so I really like to set up an event. And then execute it and then look back at, what exactly it is that you've done. It's a very satisfying feeling. It's time consuming, but you can just really throw your passion into it. So that's why I went to the International Leisure and Events Management study. But then along came the second year, during which we had to choose tracks. And one of them was the events tracks, which I thought I'd just choose because that's exactly in line with my interests.
We have 4 or 5 tracks, right? We have international leisure and event management. We have attraction and theme park management, culture venue management, leisure management broad, and then we have social innovation. Like social innovation is something totally else. That's how I experience. But please continue your story.
No, definitely, because I actually, and maybe a lot of our listeners as well, haven't really heard the term social innovation really been explained in depth, because you can listen to it. Okay, it's innovations with social aspects to it. So innovation with people, like what exactly is it? So I went to an introductory day where we a little bit got a glimpse of what social innovation is. And one example, which I think I'll come back to later, was a club designed for deaf people.
What was the name of it again?
Yeah, this is bad. I don't remember. But I tried to search it up once, and there were multiple deaf clubs out there right now. But, it's got to start somewhere. And the first one to start at, it used the vibrations of the bass and the smells and other experiences to really create not just a club for deaf people, but a unique experience in and of its own. And this experience design with that social aspect to it really drew me in, because you can always create events, but what are you doing it for? And I think for me, that was my start into the social innovation track, let's so say. And then I just got more and more into it, and here I am.
Yeah. So you like, for me, it was also kind of, I started, of course, international leisure and event management. And at first I never heard of social innovation, and I didn't go to BUAS with the intention to study social innovation. I got there with the intention to maybe do the broad version of leisure management after I have my propedeutic. How do you call it in English? Propedeutic?
Yeah, I think there is an English term for it. It's just not quite known. In the Dutch education, you get a separate certificate if you complete 1 year of university.
Yes. So after I completed that, I also looked into, like, what do I want to do now? Like, do I want to specialize in events? And I was very much interested in events, but I was also thinking, like, maybe I like it more to just go to events instead of studying it for the next upcoming 3 years. I would like to keep it broad. Yeah. So then I went to a lecture of Joep. Joep is kind of the organizer of social innovation. Unfortunately, he's going to leave us next year, but yeah, it's an awesome guy. I learned a lot from him. But he gave us a lecture about social innovation. And he said, like, after this lecture, you might know this will totally be something for you, or you will not like this at all. And so I had the lecture, and then I talked about it with my friends, and I was like, yeah, I really like this. And then my other friends were like, no, definitely not. So that made me look into this more. And then we had some deep dive workshops, and eventually I signed up for the selection days. That's where I also met Alex. And that's kind of where it all started. So we had 3 days, and we had to do a lot of assignments to find out if social innovation is something for us. And yeah, I actually thought it was just a lot of fun. And this is also where we met the people from our team, because we don't really work in classes, we work with teams. And Alex and I are both from Team 14. And yeah, Team 14 means, like, we're the 14th team that starts social innovation. So this program hasn't been there, like, from the beginning. It started up slowly. And then people who are in the third year of their studies are from Team 13, and so on. But yeah, eventually we got here to social innovation, and I don't know, maybe you can just describe something about the first weeks. How were they for you? Was it like you totally got the flow of it, or still confusing?
Right. It was still confusing. It's still confusing, because even, let's take the broader sense, the broader study, the international leisure and events management. You always still need to explain a little bit to people what exactly that entails, because events people, of course, understand, but what is leisure? Of course, there's a lot of the different leisure aspects. You have the, how do you say it, the solid places, just the museums, the theaters, the cultural aspects to it. But you also have just the hospitality industry, which you can really intertwine within a concept. All the experiences, parks, attractions. You have a lot of different things that people do in their leisure time. So that's already difficult to explain. And then you go to social innovation, and that's even, I wouldn't even say a sub branch of it, but that's just a separate branch in general, which uses a lot of the same elements that create successes within the leisure industry. So all these words that are coming out of my mouth right now are something that I just discovered over time. But in the first few weeks, it was still so confusing. Like, what am I doing here exactly? Where am I going? And what are my options? Because one of the unique things about the social innovation tracks in comparison with, let's say, other tracks or even other studies is that we get the complete freedom to organize our schedule in any way we see fit. So say you want to do a project about process design, which is something we'll come back to later. Process design in the regular track is handled in the third year. If you want to do that now, go for it. If you have a good idea, pitch it. If you have a project that really fits between those guidelines that make up that subject course, just make a project proposal and go for it. You can even work together with people from different teams or then, of course, different years if they haven't done this process design project yet, and then just go for it. It's very different.
Yeah, like what I really like about the structure we have is, like you just said, we can just choose whenever we want to do a certain subject. So you also choose when you want to deliver your subject. So we don't really have deadlines. Well, we have a few. It's like it's not like completely no structure. Of course, there has to be one. But yeah, you can choose whenever you want to do a project and for who you want to do a project. So you also have to really go into the field and talk to people and ask like, hey, do you have a project for me to do something, or can I help you with something? And what I really like is that it's so good for your network and you have so much in the field experience. You're kind of on an internship for 3 years, but you do have the backup of school. And at Social Innovation, we really help each other. But I think this might still sound very complicated. So we will look into the structure of Social Innovation. So at Social Innovation,
I do want to expand on that. One of the things that you said earlier about that a lot of people didn't really choose social innovation right off the bat is precisely because of this reason, because you don't have any deadlines. You need to set them for yourself because school's not going to do it. If you don't have a project, if you don't come up with anything, then there is no deadline. If you create something, you create your own deadlines. From that perspective, it's really simple, but the execution of that really requires some self-discipline that some students really don't feel comfortable with. Not saying that they couldn't do it. It's just, it's completely different mindset.
Yeah, and also like, it's exactly like if you don't do anything, nothing will happen. There's nobody who will say, okay, you have to do this assignment before that date and this has to be in the assignment. You have to come up with your own curriculum, and of course we get grades for it, but everybody's doing something completely different. So yeah, it's a big opportunity, but it's also a trap. Like, yeah, you just have to be disciplined. But like for me, that really worked because I feel like I gained so much more experience now, and it will help me in the future because I already tackled this freedom, having this freedom that you usually get like after you graduate. So yeah, I really like it. How about we're gonna dive into the structure of the program, or do you first want to talk about the definition of social innovation?
I think that's a good place to first start with because, of course, social innovation is such a massive part of the social innovation track. That's good to give a little bit of an overview. Yeah. So social innovation, what exactly is it? Well, in the Performatory, and the Performatory also maybe good to note is the company of social innovation, is the organization, which is a separate part of the Breda University of Applied Sciences, but it still falls under it. That is the organization that really is the one that is part of social innovation, if I explain it correctly.
We work under the name Performatory. And we have our own branding and logo.
The organization is Performatory, the study track is social innovation.
Yeah.
So social innovation, at least in a way, because social innovation is a subjective term, it differs to people. But what it is in my mind and feel to add other things to it if you so choose, is to make sustainable change by means of experiences, processes, or within a community for the people and by the people themselves.
Yeah, I really like your explanation. And like what Alex said, it's very subjective, and that means that the definition differs for everybody. Like it's not one definition. For me, social innovation is about bringing a positive change to the world, and that sounds very floating and high in the air. But what I mean with that is you help other people to evolve themselves. So you're not so much coming up with a new concept for like an event or something, but if you still want to focus on events, you can go to an event and help them, for example, with the sustainability aspect of what they're doing. But you can do that, I think, literally every company.
Yeah, because definitely that one of the things is that there isn't really a social innovator job specifically out there, but one of the things that we learn as social innovators is to just how to use these skills in different positions. So as I said before, the events for me is something that, you can learn in the events track as well. But what if you, with a social innovator perspective on it, what other changes can you make? What other perspectives are there on that same kind of thing? So it's not just like, okay, you've graduated, now you're a social innovator. No, it's more, you graduated as international leisure and events manager, but you've got the qualities of a social innovator, which you can use in so many different ways.
Yeah, exactly. And like something we use in social innovation that I really like, and at every project I come back to it, is the question behind the question. Like at social innovation, we go, like if we do a project for other people, we go there and we ask, what is your problem? How can we help? And you just talk to a lot of people so you completely understand what is going on, but you try to look behind that. So maybe, I can't really come up with an example right now, but maybe something's going on and they think that's the problem, but usually there's something else going on that needs to be solved before something else can be solved. So it sounds
like just a random example is then say you have a lot of you live in a quote unquote bad neighborhood and there's always a lot of noise at night and there's always trouble out in the streets. So you ask for help at the municipality or any other organization and you ask the questions, how can we make sure that the people stop yelling at night? But if you take the question at that face value, you ignore all the other questions that are there. Like, okay, why are they there in the first place? What is something that caused this? Maybe not asking how we can solve this problem is the right question, but maybe the right question is how can we facilitate these people that are outside to, let's say, express themselves in different ways. I'm just completely making this up, but it shows that the question that is being asked isn't always the right question. And what that is part of the job of a social innovator to find that out by working together with people. Not to, make that question him or herself, but to get that from the people.
Yeah. And what I also really like that we do at Social Innovation, mainly at designs, process design and community design. I'll explain about that more later. But we let the people create the change. We just help them doing it. So it's not like we make the change and we organize something for them so things will get better, but we let them do it. So it's more sustainable and most likely they will do it again because they came up with the solution and they did it themselves. We just gave them, a push in the back, so to say. Just help them a little.
Yeah, I think with that in mind, let's move on to the design so we can give a little bit more of a tangible explanation of all these high concepts that we're throwing out.
Yeah. Okay, so I'll tell something about it.
Sure.
So social innovation starts at the second year of your studies, and you're supposed to graduate within 3 years. But of course, because you have so much flexibility, some people take up a bit longer, but it's also possible to graduate a bit sooner. That's really up to you. In these 3 years, we have 3 designs, and a design is kind of like a subject. So we have experience design, process design, and community design. And for every design, there are theme days. And these theme days, that takes up a whole day. You get information on the subject, you work with a commissioner, you do an assignment, you really tackle the theories in practice.
Yeah, think of these designs, if I can add on that. Each design is a semester in a regular study terms. However, you can pick and choose which ones of these theme days of which semester you want to follow. Like, do you want to follow all experience design or have a little process design in it, and then maybe one community design, what you're interested in, or just none at all and focus on completely different things. But each of these designs is a semester.
And then after we finish one theme day, so there are 30 in total if you take all those 3 designs. But if you finish one, we are supposed to write a 2-pager about it. In this 2-pager, you look back at the theories and you connect it to examples of your own. And by writing these things, we also get assessed on our English. So we don't have English as a subject. We just have the possibility to go to an English lab. So like there's 3 hours where you can just walk in and go to the teacher and ask for feedback. Or if you want to practice something, you can just go there, and it's a very nice person. And that's it's Annette. And she will just help you if you show interest. And okay, so going back to the designs, we'll start with experience design, because there is more than just the theme days, because that would be very easy, of course. For every theme day that you follow and the 2-pager that you deliver, you can get 2 ECs, right? Is it 2?
Oh, yeah, it's 1 EC per pair.
Separately.
Yes. But that is 10 ECs then in total.
Yeah, because we still work with ECs. Eventually, after we finish social innovation, so in those 3 years, we still have to gather 180 ECs, just as in a regular program.
Yes, but you can decide if you want to get 60 or 80 or 30. It's not, or finish like with 40, but are still on the way to gather ECs for another project. It's very flexible.
Yeah. So for experience design, you can gather 10 ECs with these 2-pagers and theme days. And then you also have to do projects for experience design. You can do a big project and a small project. For a small project, you can gather 5 ECs, and for a big project, you can gather 10. However, it's also possible to mix these up. Like, for example, we are doing this right now. We made this a very big project, so we just do 1 and collect 15 ECs with this. Alex, maybe you can tell something about how the startup of a project looks like with the project proposal and stuff.
Definitely, because first, let's say you have an idea. You come to social innovation, you are in the 2nd year, and you think now, hey, I want to start up something, but you have no clue what to do. Say you want to, let's go back to this thing about people running around at night and there's people complaining, and you want to solve that in one way or the other. So you go to the school and then you ask, okay, what do I do then? The first thing you need to do is to figure out your focus. What is it that you want to achieve, or what is the direction you want to go with, and which design works best for that? So if we look at experience design, for example, say in this example, because it's really, we don't know all the details, but say all these people just hang out at night and just are having a good time. With an experience design project, you can have the perspective of, hey, how can I create an experience for these people that occupies them during this time of night while not making them bother their neighbors, something like that. So within experience design, then you can figure out theories and approaches of how you can actually make an experience that adheres to the values of those people, but also taking into account the neighbors that have these noise complaints, or maybe do the other way around, maybe create an experience with them all together. And then, it's so very much what you want to get out of it. That is what you focus on. But then before you get started, you have to design a design brief. It's basically a text in which you say, this is my project, this is what I want to accomplish, or this is the aim that I'm going for, because sometimes it changes during your project, of course. this is how much ECs I want to have for it, and is this okay? Then you deliver it to one of our teachers, which we call experts. We'll get into that in a little bit. And then it's either approved or not because of reasons. They could say, no, it's not enough of an experience, or you need to put more time in it, or less time if you only want a few ECs, and they can maybe link it to something else.
Yeah.
And once it's approved, then you have the go. And with the go, it just means you have a project.
Yes,
and
exactly.
Then you can officially get started.
Yeah. And maybe nice to mention is that, of course, everybody's doing a different project at different times. But every other week, there is an experience design lab. This means that it's like 2 hours, I thought, on Mondays.
Yeah.
And it means that you can go there, you can present your project. And other people who are also doing experience design projects are also there. And there is an expert there. So you can just present your project, ask for feedback, or you can just do whatever you need at that moment, and others will help you with that. So you're not alone in this. And also when choosing a project, you can choose if you want to do it on your own or with 2 people or 3. Like it's up to you.
Yeah.
Yeah. So I think that covers experience design, right?
Yeah, I think maybe just to give an example of experience design in the field, it's just, if we relate it back to a little bit, the Club for Deaf People, that whole experience is something which is both beneficial to the target group that you're working with. It adds also value to society in a way, because you give these people a chance to experience what they otherwise couldn't and get enjoyment out of it.
And that's really important, I think, adding value to society, because we do social innovation. So you can't just make an experience design project from something you like. You have to relate it back to society and how you make a change in a positive way.
Yeah,
and
definitely.
It sounds complicated, but it's really easy to do, I think, at least. Like at the beginning, I was like, oh, so I can't do this and I can't do this. But one way or another, you can always relate it back to society.
Right. Which is different from sustainability, but also a huge part of it. But it really depends on the project, what your perspective on it is. And all of those things. Yeah,
I feel like a lot of people think social innovation is about nature and sustainability and the environment, but
it's not.
I have had no focus on it yet. Like maybe I will in the future, but there is so much more than that. So don't try to focus on, like, if you don't like that aspect of social innovation, it is an aspect of it, but if you don't like it, then just don't focus on it and focus on something else. So yeah.
Yeah, definitely. I think it's also an interesting subject to talk about, because in my view, I believe that sustainability now is so integrated into every concept. It's not really a question of, is this going to be sustainable? It's just, it has to be. Those are the times we live in, rather than if you ask it 7 years ago, it would still be, hey, look, this project is sustainable.
Yeah, exactly.
Yeah, but that just doesn't work anymore, because it has to be part of your concept, or else it's not a good concept.
No, and it's not like if you're occupied, like if you're thinking, oh, I don't want to do it, you'll also do it when you choose for the events track or attraction and theme park.
Definitely, I'd argue even more so.
Yeah, you will always have a focus on it, so that should not be a reason not to choose social innovation.
Yeah.
Okay, should we move on to process design?
Sure.
Yeah, for the record, we will also make another podcast on experience design, where we can go a bit more in depth about what experience design actually is and have some better examples. But this podcast would just simply be way too long if we do them for every design. So if you are interested in experience design, just keep on listening to our podcast in the future.
Yeah. We want to give you guys a brief overview of exactly what we do here. By going a little in depth, but if we go too much in depth, we'll be here all day.
Okay, so I haven't done process design yet, so I think, Alex, you can tell me a better story of what process design is.
Oh yeah, I love process design. It's great. So yeah, what is process design exactly? Process design is I think the best way to explain it is a working method. It's a way to not focus on the outcome of a project, for example, but on the way on how you get there. So what do I mean with that? A process, first, the definition of a process is just a set of events, set of steps, which leads to a certain point. Within process design, you look at a concept and you see that process and you want to become a part of it. Say, again, just because it's now a recurring theme, these people that are outside are making a lot of noise. There's the end question that is being said at first is, of course, can you get these guys off the street, or can you get them to be quiet? Within process design, you don't focus on that question. You go step by step. You get all these stakeholders together. You listen to what is going on, and then you create a solution together with them, but you don't create that solution. It's done by them. Because usually if people have a problem, they already know what the problem is. They already know their personal solution. But sometimes they just either don't care of the other people, or there's other underlying factors that you have to really go through in order to understand. But you're not going to be the guy that gives a magical solution to it all. You're going to be the guy that facilitates the process of a new, stable, let's say in this case, a new stable neighborhood where people then can coexist in this new norm that you've created. But the issue is, as a process designer, is that you got to come in and go out, and then it stays fixed. You don't got to be there and then you make the solution and then you leave. No, you got to come there. The people have the problem. You make them solve it. You facilitate that process, and then you leave, and the process, the solution will stay fixed. It has to be sustainable in a way.
And if I understand it right, at process design, when you enter a group, you must be on the same level, right? So it's not like you have more in the hierarchy, like you have more power than them. You become one of them, right?
In a way,
Or is that more community design?
I think community design is something which is very interesting. Maybe you can give more information about that later, because personally, I haven't really been having a lot of encounter with community design. But another, maybe a little bit more of a understandable example is, I only own a Dutch word for this. It's when you have a discrepancy between young people and old people within a company.
Mm-hmm.
So there's a really big difference in both culture, in the way that they approach things, and the older generation thinks that, okay, this is the way how we do it, and it's always worked, and we're going to continue with this, and innovation, so to speak, will be put within that framework, while the younger people say, like, hey, we have all these great ideas, they're all being thrown aside. This is not fair. The company is becoming stale, they don't listen to us, yada, yada, yada. As a process designer, your job is not to solve that issue of the discrepancy between the youth and the elderly within the company. Your job is to get these people together, make them understand each other, either talk it out or make them realize exactly what the problem is, and then come up with a solution that fits their organization. Because you can read all the things you want and you can have all these theories, but if you present it to them and they say, okay, yeah, cool, we'll do it, and then you say great and leave, and then they go right back to their old ways of thinking, that doesn't work. It has to come from them. You just facilitate this change.
Yeah, exactly. Oh, I really like this example, Alex.
Okay, well, thank you.
I think it's time to tell something about the structure of process design. It's almost the same as experience design. You have the theme days again. So, what I forgot to mention is that, so you have 10 theme days per design. And these theme days are given once every half a year. So if you miss one, you can do it half a year later, like in the next semester or in the next year. So you get many chances to follow these theme days.
Definitely.
Yeah, so we have these theme days again, and you have to write the 2-pagers, can collect 10 ECs in total for them. 20. 10, right?
Yes, it's 10 for each 2-pager.
Right. So that, and then you also have to do a big project and a small project. You also have a lab session again that you can join, in which you can ask for feedback and present your project.
One thing that I would like to add, I think we haven't addressed that yet, is the slight difference between a big and a small project is just how much effort you're going to put into it. How much time, how much theoretical background are you willing to spend on the project? And then beforehand, you decide is it going to be big or small. But if you decide it's small and it turns out to be way, way larger, you can always change it later, make a new proposal. And if it's accepted, you just have a big one then.
Yeah, exactly. And maybe it's also funny to mention, interesting to mention our example, because Alex and I started a project, what we thought would be 5 ECs. And along the way, we just figured out a lot of things. And this project became very big. So we went back to the lab session. This was for experience design, by the way. Yeah. So we went to the lab session of experience design. And we said, okay, so we want to keep going with this project, but we want to have more than 5 ECs. So we talked to the teacher or to the expert, and we came to the conclusion that this could be a very big project. So we now get 15 ECs for it. Yeah. So when you start, you don't need to know like, oh, this is going to be this big or this big. You'll just figure it out along the way. Trust the process.
Yeah, that's a term that gets around a lot. Yeah. Trust the process. It's going to be fine. Yeah. Just go. Just do it.
Yeah. And why then not? What is special about, so for process design, you have, again, a big and a small project. For the big project, 10 ECs. For the small one, 5. But process design has also something else, and that's a design course. For your design course, you can also collect 5 ECs. You have to write a report afterwards. Depends on the project you did.
You look at something that is being facilitated, could be anything and everything, and you see how that is being facilitated and how these process steps are being integrated. So look at a process. Sorry?
You look at the process of somebody else and you you judge it and see what can go better, what went good, what was good, what went wrong.
So what did they use as well? What were the aspects that actually touched you? What didn't? Why? You can look at it for like professional events, say a congress, just see how it's organized, or you can look at from simple things like a family dinner. You're probably not going to get ECs with that, but you can still see like, oh, okay, now they're doing this and now it's like this and this is the reason because of that. This is what works. This has this theory behind it, and then just really analyze.
Yeah. So yeah, I think that's a good description of it. So then we come to our last design, which is community design. And community design is a design that I just started, so I don't have a lot of expertise on it yet, but I hope to finish it this year. Community design really focuses on, for example, what you just said with the neighborhood. It can focus on that, and you really see what are the connections between people and how can I help them to solve the problem. So kind of what you did with process design, but you really try to create a community.
Yeah, I think that is the thing. That's why it's a separate design, because sometimes the goal is not just to, let's say, solve a challenge, but it is to create a community out of it. And sometimes that is a solution that's part of the process. But creating a community has so many different benefits than solving a challenge.
Yeah, exactly. And for community design, it works almost the same as experience design. You again have lab sessions where you can present your project. You have a big project, small project, and you have to write 2-pagers about it. Yeah, I think that covers community design, right? It was very.
Well, I think. Do you have in your theme days? Do you have an example that you can give to make it a little bit more tangible to the listeners to see how community design works in the field?
Okay, yeah, I have. I'm taking the example of one of the students, one of my fellow classmates who is also doing a project for community design. She does a project for the Haagse Beemde, and there they have this issue that we are now having this corona issue. So their community is kind of falling apart, and they always use.
What kind of organization is this?
Oh, it's about a neighborhood. How do you say that? Community center.
Okay.
In Breda, and they always had a local newspaper about what was happening in the neighborhoods, which people were doing project for the neighborhoods or were involved, and because they have people with like a lot of different backgrounds, and they said we want this new newspaper again, and if you were doing this project for experience design, you would create this new newspaper and ask for the stories and blah 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 blah. But
Yeah.
since this is a community design project, you talk to the people and you look what their qualities are. You ask a bit about their background, and then you stimulate them to also get in touch with the others and write this newspaper themselves. So you really look at what the qualities are of these people and how you can make this community strong again without being involved too much yourself.
I think
So this way it's
that is
also
a
sustainable.
lovely example of how you can have one challenge which you can approach in different ways, different designs. You said,
Yeah.
of course, that the newspaper itself is an experience design. Then creating that community again is then community design. And I think looking at it from process design, it's how can you facilitate a solution that solves these problems, not knowing what the solution is.
Mm-hmm. Yeah.
So
Yeah,
it's,
exactly.
yeah, it really just depends on what is your perspective on it. How do you want to go about it?
Yeah. So yeah, that's it for the design. So in total, how many ECs can we collect for the designs, if I'm right? So it's 20.
Well,
It's
30 for
80,
all
right?
It's 30 for all 2 papers for each semester.
And then 15 for every design, like the project. So there's 45 in total.
Yeah.
And then 5 for the design course. So
Yeah, so that's 80.
80. Yeah. So these are 80 ECs, but of course that's not all of it. Yeah. So we also gained this theory from the team days, and since we are still connected to international leisure and events management, they want us to make the progress test. And this progress test is a test which we have every few months, and it tests your knowledge of all the theories. So every how do you call that? Every person from every track has to do this progress test.
Everyone at school, basically.
Yeah, everybody.
Yeah.
And we started in the first year with making 40 questions out of the 200, right?
Yes.
And now we're at making, I thought, 140 or 160 questions out of the 200. So you have to know more every time. And yeah,
One of the things that's
you have
good to know maybe is that this progress test is really one thing that unites all the students from international leisure and events management, because a lot of the theory and applications of it gets taught from a leisure perspective. And we apply that within our social innovations, but so do the other tracks of that. Let's say events, of course, uses leisure, but also the leisure track. I think attractions and theme parks is the only exception to that. But it really just shows that at the end of the day, everyone gets a international leisure and events management certificate, but with a different specialization.
Yeah.
And that's why we're so free in deciding when you can pick something from what other people do in semester 3. Because if you learn stuff from semester 3 that normally you would not get in this semester 2, then it doesn't matter because you can apply that in the progress test anyway. Just make a question that comes by later.
Yeah, exactly. And that's what I think is really nice about the progress test. And I know some people really stress about this test, but in my experience, I think it's pretty easy because you do projects and you use all the theory that you gained during the theme days. And because you apply the theory, you will remember it. And I think it makes it pretty easy to answer this progress test. I don't know how that's in your experience. How did you experience that?
Yeah, I do think that in the first year that was the case for me. But it's also because we get so much information thrown at each, like from all these different directions, from each different parts of different semesters. I'm not really sure like when what is applicable, but that always comes clear over time. The more you invest time in it, the more you see, okay, this is how that works, and this is how the normal structure then looks like, and how it's then portrayed in the progress test. But you get everything eventually, just at a different time.
Yeah. And the progress test, you just have to get a 5.5 or higher to get your ECs. And during the 4 years and like the 3 years in total, I don't know exactly how many ECs you can gain, but like as long as you pass it, you're good.
Yeah.
So I think that covers the progress test. And then we go to the expedition. Yes, expedition. I don't know, but I really, really enjoyed the expedition. How was that for you?
Definitely. I think I was very glad I joined immediately.
Yeah, because you can choose, like, okay, maybe just give a little bit of background about what the expedition is and how it's structured before we're going to tell our experiences with the expedition. So the expedition is given every year at the Performatory. So when you're a second year student, you do your personal expedition. When you're in the third year of your academic life, you do your professional expedition. And then eventually you do the final expeditions.
Yes.
And the expedition takes up 14 weeks. And you can start it at 3 different moments in one academic year. So we both started it the first year, and the personal expedition is about So they said, choose a subject. You can choose whatever you would like and become an expert in it. So do as much as possible investigation into the subject.
That's pretty much it.
Field, talk to people and present it, and keep up with a scrapbook. So yeah, you start and you'll be like, oh, I have no idea. What do I like? What do I want to focus on? And during those weeks, you really get an overview like, oh, this is something I find really interesting and I want to know more about this and this. And eventually you have so much information. So you have to come up with a way that works for yourself to structure this information. And eventually you present it to other people, to stakeholders, to everybody who wants to listen in a kind of TED Talk.
Yeah, because the point of the expedition, of the 3 different expeditions is different, but all has to do with society and societal challenges. So for the personal expedition, you try to find a societal challenge in your field of interest. Then in the professional expedition, you try to see how you could solve that question that you created in the personal expedition, and in your final expedition, like scriptie in Dutch, or what's it called in just regular terms?
I wouldn't know, really.
Yeah, just the last thing you do before you graduate, basically. Then you use that knowledge that you know, okay, how to solve the society issue, and you implement it. So it's a timeline that you yourself create into something you become an expert with. So I think if you're going to try to make it tangible, say you join social innovation, and in the personal expedition, you think, okay, music is my passion. I like music. It's just something that is a part of my daily life. Mm-hmm. Then you start to research not just music and listen to music, of course, but what is music there in society? How does that look like? How does it influence different cultures? Why do we listen it to the way that we do? And what are the consequences of that? So maybe this is not academically supported in any way, shape, or form, but maybe you discover that music in rural areas actually bring a negative effect, because they only show that there's no pub venues anymore, and you only hear the main hits, and there's no really like a cultural diversity there anymore, because music brings so much inspiration, blah, blah, blah. This is not true. So your societal challenge then could be, how might we help, if that is then a problem, how would we help these people in facilitating? It's very difficult to come up with something on the spot.
No, it's like, you can say, how can we help them by using music? Just very simply, yeah.
Yes.
So yeah, you can just choose whatever you like, and you just you look for the question behind the question and see what is connected to this subject, and eventually you find a societal challenge. And that's where you end the personal expedition with. And then you just go to your second year, and then you can start the professional expedition, and you take the societal challenge and you do more research about it.
And then you can try to solve it, at least figure out how you would like to solve it. Mm-hmm. Because your final expedition, then you try to execute it.
Yeah.
Okay, so what's the question? How do we solve it? Let's do it. 1, 2.
But what I think is really nice about this personal expedition is that you kind of get to know your own interest. So for me, I really found an interest that I didn't know was there. And because I already finished it at the first go that we could, like the first time it was given for us, I really tried to find projects that contribute to my personal expedition, since it's my interest. And I also can use the project that I did during my professional expedition, because you only gain more information, you get new perspectives, and you just play around with your interest a little bit.
Yeah, I think it's good to mention, though, that all of these things really has to then relate back to social innovation or even transformative social innovation.
Yes.
Yes.
Right, transformative social innovation. That is something that connects to the personal, professional, and final expedition. And we have a teacher or an expert that is very passionate about transformative social innovation. And I think we can make a long podcast about this. And we just have a lot of information about TSI. Maybe explain briefly what it means.
Yeah, well, TSI is then everything we've talked about previously about what social innovation is, but to bring it more in a societal level and to make it more sustainable. So now we take these people, this neighborhood where people are screaming outside every night. Transformative social innovation would look at that not in how can we solve this problem, but to look specifically at what in society is causing this problem to begin with, and then seeing if you can tweak little things within society in different ways to make it, to change it, to really change culture in a way, but that also fits within the cultural framework of what it is now. Yeah. It sounds very complicated, and that's because it is, but it really focuses on sustainable change from a societal framework.
Yes. And for the personal expedition, we have a class every week from a few hours where we just talk about our subject, the research we did, we ask for feedback, and then we have a break. And after the break, we go to Ger. He is the expert that teaches us about TSI. And then we just talk about TSI for 2 hours, and we try to implement what we gain during these TSI sessions. So he gives us a lot of tools where we can work with, and we try to implement the information that we gain in our expedition.
Yeah.
Yeah. And I think that's about it for the expedition. But
yeah, it's just you really have to, because the thing is, of course, that you pick a subject and you make a presentation out of it. It really has to, of course, relate to social innovation and how you can actually make this change. And then you can use different models and tools to support your claim. And it has to be well developed, because you spend like 14 weeks on this. It's not something that you just can pull out of your behind.
You get 14 ECs for this. So that's 14 times 28 hours. That's just a lot of work that you could put into it. Because for me, at one point, I just was so occupied with the expedition that everything else was just background music for me. So I was just working on this expedition and really got caught up in it. But I also think that's the beauty of it, because you do find a passion that's like very close to you.
Definitely.
So, it gives you a lot to think of.
Yeah, it really gets a chance for you to develop yourself as a social innovator. So within this education, it's again more than specializing you as a person rather than you as a social innovator. Because what is a social innovator? It's still a very broad term, but if you can really delve into a subject what you have passion for and can really sell that to others, well then, hey, great for you, right?
Yeah, and I think once we're graduated, this professional, personal, and final expedition together really describes what we are as a social innovator. Yes. So that's also really nice to present to others. And so to the expedition is also connected to English, of course, because we have to present eventually the information that we gained. Once we presented it and our English is okay, we also can gather ECs with it. I believe this is where it's 2 ECs. And of course, we don't expect, it's not expected to us to be perfect at the first attempt. So we can, again, go to this English lab. There are no classes, but you can just go whenever you want and you can practice with the teacher again and the other students that are there.
Yeah, because we're still focusing, even though this location is in the Netherlands, we try to focus on the international market, and we have at the Performatory a lot of international students as well. Mm-hmm. So that's just why English is a very important part of the education itself. So you can't just talk, and if it's bad, get away with it.
Yeah.
And that sounds very negative, but you know what I mean. You just have to have a certain level of professionality within your the English language, and I'm sure that we have screwed up a lot over this podcast, but that's okay. Live and learn. Call us out on it.
Yes, eventually we'll get it. But So for the personal expedition, you can get ECs for speaking, but at the professional expedition, you can gather ECs for professional speaking. So along the way, you can gather more ECs during this expedition.
Yes.
And eventually there are, so by the way, I forgot to say, you can collect like 16 ECs in total for every expedition. And then for the final expedition, it is arranged a bit differently. We don't know too much about it since we didn't, it's for like your last year of this education, but there's more things you can do for it to gather ECs as well.
Yeah, I think that's an interesting thing to mention as well. You say like the last year of the education. It kind of contradicts all the other design courses, because at the start we said that you could just pick and choose whatever you want. But the expedition is a step-by-step process.
Yeah.
So you can't start with your final expedition if you haven't done your personal, because what are you going to execute if you don't know what you're talking about? And if you haven't done your professional yet, then you don't know how exactly you want to structure your execution and, stuff like that. You can change your subject, but you really have to have that knowledge of your subject build up through then other means if you don't talk to it in your personal professional. But that is the only one. The expedition is the only aspect which is really in a chronological order.
Yeah, exactly. And I think it would be really nice to talk to somebody who already finished the final expedition to tell how that journey was for her. Because, of course, we only did the personal expedition. So that person can maybe tell more about it. But that's also for in the future where we will dive in deeper about the expedition. So I think there's one more thing to cover, right?
I think so.
Yeah.
The extension.
Yes. Yeah. Tell something.
I think I can tell a lot about that because I have been involved in the extension course for a long, long time now. So what is extension? Well, in all the other tracks or in a lot of other studies, you have to go on exchange or you have to do a placement or what have you. This is here called extension. And in the extension, you can do just that. However, you can also see it as 30 free ECs, which you can spend in any way you want. So what does this mean? I'll give you an example. I wanted to go to Japan at the start of the year. I had the opportunity to go to the Paralympics and Olympics, but it wasn't finalized in any way, shape, or form. I just had a big shot of getting there. So I went to extension meeting immediately. I said, hey, this is my issue. They also said that I had to learn Japanese for it in order to even be qualified for it. So I started Japanese.
Or who said that?
The Olympics itself, because the French and English are the official language of the Olympics and Paralympics. But in Japan, you can forget French, and English is just not that well spoken over there. So they said if I'm going to work internally, I need to speak at least some Japanese. And officially, I needed to have a diploma, but that wasn't going to happen in that short time frame. So it was mostly just going to go through connections.
Yeah.
But I had to learn it just, to converse. So I had these two things which I wanted to do, a placement for half a year and learning Japanese. And I have no clue how that was going to work. So they said, okay, here's what you do. Just go for the placement. And for 10 ECs, I had to make, again, another proposal. I could learn Japanese for school then as well. So I'm following a half-year course. And I had to argument, okay, why is this good for me as a person, but also as a social innovator? And then the thing is that if you see that extension has 30 ECs, but then I already took up 10 for learning Japanese, and there's 30 which I want to spend on this internship. Like, how does that work? Well, then 20 go into the extension, and the other 10 would go either into community design, process design, or experience design. Depends on what I would do and how I would argumented. So again, really flexible.
Yes, so this might sound very complicated, but in this case, for example, Alex, his community design project would be sort of cancelled, but you would do the community design project within your internship.
Yes.
So like almost everything is possible.
Yeah, it's really just see it as 30 ECs that you can spend however you want, as long as you relate it to social innovation. For me, the challenge with learning Japanese is that the internship didn't go through. Thank God.
Yeah, definitely now during the Corona times, you don't want to be there. Like you
Yes.
can't really do anything there.
Yeah, so now in order to make it more a part of social innovation, I am giving the plan is at least that I'm going to create video workshop for people to watch online, which includes not just the Japanese language, but also a lot of intercultural competences, just to see what is the difference between Asia and the West in the terms of languages, and how does that language shape reality, stuff like that. And that way it also adds value to other people, as they can just gain knowledge from an intercultural competence perspective, but also it's just entertaining, and it shows my progress to see, because nobody here speaks Japanese and can judge me on what I've learned, but I can show it in a different way. And that is then how I do it in the extension.
And in this case, Alex is focusing on Japanese, and for him, this is a proof because it had value for him as a social innovator. But if I would do this, it might not have been approved because I have no interest in learning Japanese or in going to such country.
Right.
So it really depends per person. But yeah, I can also name an example of how I want to do my extension.
Oh, go for it.
Like, as I mentioned in the beginning, I went to international leisure and event management with the interest of my doing the events sector. But eventually I went for social innovation. But I still do have this interest in events and in music and in festivals. And
Right.
So I don't want to give up on it yet. I really want to see if it's something I might be interested in to do after school, or if it's something that is just horrible for me and can get completely off the table. But I just don't know that yet. So what I want to do with my extension is maybe look for an internship at Q Dance or B2S or any other festival organization that is in the hostile branch, because that is where my interest is. So it's really up to you how you want to spend these ECs. And like, as Alex already mentioned, he already used 10 of his ECs. If I would have done that already, if I already would have used 10 ECs from my extension, I could still go on this internship and collect 30 ECs, but then I would just have to connect community design to it, or maybe process design. So there's just a lot of options on what you want to do with an extension. And I think the message of this is find out what you're interested in, link it to a social challenge or link it to social innovation, and just go for it. Write a proposal, tell to a lot of people, and just do it.
Yeah, one of the last things I want to say about the extension is, if you want, you can also, in that case, skip an internship altogether. Just use these 30 ECs for something that you like otherwise.
Yeah.
However, for me personally, you then also don't get anything on your certificate at the end, and it's going to be harder, not impossible, just harder to convince a potential company of what exactly it is that you've done, unless you spend all these ECs on something which really sells you as a person. But it's a choice. You can do whatever. It's up to you. Who do you want to be as a professional? You develop over time, and that's the beauty of it.
And what we didn't mention is that you can also use your extension to go on an exchange.
Oh, yeah. Yeah.
Yeah, that's also an option. If you want to go to another country and maybe follow certain subjects, you can just do it, use it for your extension, write a project proposal why you want to do it. But you can also use, for example, if it really connects to experience design, what you're doing over there, you can connect experience design to it. So yeah, it's up to you if you do this from the Netherlands or somewhere else. And of course, it is easier to, you have to be here for some things, of course. But if you want to be in another country for a year, it is possible.
Yeah, go for it. So
yeah,
it's like that. Yeah, you can talk about it for hours. If you have all your ECs from experience design, but you still want to do an experience design project, then just use your extension point for it.
Yeah,
it's just that simple.
But something I want to say for the future students that might be listening to this, it sounds maybe very complicated and very flexible, but I hope that you see now that there is a system that we follow, so you're not totally out in the blue, and we will, like, the program will help you. The other students will understand what you're doing if you go to the lab sessions, and they will help you, because everybody is very open and willing to just hear stories about what you're doing, and to maybe work together and really trust the process, because at the beginning we had no clue what was going on. Even not in the first month, I didn't really get how this program worked, but you just figure it out along the way. You don't want to be able to know everything at the start. Just let go of that thought of wanting to know everything. Just go with the flow.
Yes.
Because if you show interest in other people, if you go to the lab sessions, go to the theme days, do projects, you'll get there easily.
Definitely.
Yeah. Is there something else you want to mention about the program, Alex? Because I think we covered it about, almost, right?
Yeah, I think we've addressed every single point of at least what you can get ECs for. Mm-hmm. Again, it's so one program from one student will look entirely different from another one. It's the only thing that keeps it all, let's say, together is that it has to address certain points to make it, of course, university worthy, to have a lot of theory within relation to experience design, community design, process design, and just leisure combined with it. But theoretically, 2 people can come out of the social innovation track having done almost nothing completely the same besides the progress test.
Mm-hmm. Yeah. So, I hope you guys will listen to our future podcast. We want to interview some people about projects they did. We want to talk to some experts about, for example, process design of community design. And just
let us know what you would like us to talk about as well. Because we, of course, have our own thoughts of how we want to continue this Podformatory podcast. But if you have any other ideas, feel free to just bounce them off us, and we'll let you know what we think.
Yeah, we would really like to interact with you guys, and so definitely ask your questions, and we'll see you in our next episode.
Yeah, thank you so much for listening, and then until then. I know past me already thanked you for listening to this podcast, but for real though, if you've listened to this entire podcast, you've heard us rambling for over an hour. That is amazing, and I hope we were able to help you out in one way or another. If you still have any other questions, feel free to hit us up. If you like this podcast, please hit us up and let us know that you did. We'd really appreciate it. And if you want more of this content in the future, be sure to stick around. We'll be sure to make more podcasts as we go. Again, thank you so much for listening, and you'll hear us in the next one.